Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip Trickle Flow Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. We are so excited to have the lovely Jessie Rosen with us today. She is an East Coast raised, West Coast based writer, producer, educator, and speaker. She's the author of the USA Today bestsellers, The Heirloom and All the Signs, both you must read. She's also a screenwriter who has sold projects to Warner Brothers, ABC, CBS, Netflix, all sorts of places, and she was the showrunner for The Baxters. She also has an awesome Substack newsletter on bravery, which we will make sure we link in our show notes. Jessie, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for creating this show. We need it. I feel like I can speak to it, but I also feel like I need to listen to it. So this is really exciting for me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Jessie, and thanks for the kind words. We're getting positive feedback, which when Melissa and I decided to throw this out into the world, we weren't quite sure how it would be received. So I'm excited that people are getting comfortable out talking about money.
Yeah. And I do think that's the thing, right? There has been a barrier in the past. I feel it really changing in my personal life, in my friendships, not even just in my business relationships. So I think there's a trend toward that for sure.
I think it's great. I guess there's a payoff for me being socially unaware and having always talked about this stuff.
That's a plus.
Jessie, that brings up a good point, though, because you are a creative, a writer, producer, etc. You also live in Los Angeles, and having lived there myself, I know that money conversations really do not happen very often amongst creatives. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your thoughts around that, because I think you are someone who is very good at looking at the business side of writing, but you're surrounded often by people who don't. So talk a little bit about navigating that, navigating those conversations, just navigating that world.
Yeah. And I think to give credit to why I don't think it's as much of a comfortable conversation, I think it's two reasons. I think there's some competitiveness and jealousy and emotions underneath the work here, underneath business that goes on in Los Angeles that prevent us from the vulnerability that it can often take to move forward. When I have been on both sides of that, I have felt so uncomfortable about how little I was making on XYZ project. And I have also felt like this survivor guilt of, oh my God, I'm getting paid a lot for this project while my friends, my peers, my colleagues are currently not. And I feel like they're suffering or I feel like they're uncomfortable. So yeah, there's this like weird, it's not like a jockeying for position, but it's like this, we all just have to keep the peace and somehow exist in this pretty weird ecosystem around money. And I think the second piece of that is creatives are not built to be business people on purpose, right? That's what is great about being a creative is that your brain does something that isn't quite in generally speaking here, numbers and negotiating and finance. And so we rely on our representatives, our agents, our managers, our lawyers to help us with those things. But then we can become very blind to them. So it's, this conversation isn't in my nature, so I'm going to avoid it entirely. I'm not going to talk about it even with people who are the business people because I'm uncomfortable because it's not what I do. And quote unquote, it's not what I have to do. That's what my agent does. That's what my lawyer does. So you can get very, almost like avoidant about it. And you can put those blinders on and put that boundary up. And I think you think the boundary is protecting you. But I have learned the longer I've gone on that the boundary has actually been preventing me from growing and from understanding, and then ultimately from helping others.
So you said if you're feeling guilty about getting paid more for a project, and then maybe one of your peers is not getting a fair pay or just didn't find the right project. Well, what separates that? Why would you or anybody be able to get a higher rate of pay?
Oh my God.
Creative work than somebody else?
Great question and a big problem in this industry. To a certain degree, because of the Writers Guild of America, right? There are some standards. There are standards for you work on a script on an existing television show on a platform, you get paid X rate for that half hour, X rate for if it's a 1 hour. So some things are standardized, but many things are not. And many things are based on leverage, the leverage you have based on your level of experience, the leverage that you have because your idea is super hot and you came up with that idea, no one else has it. And then I also have found the leverage of the way that your representative, your agent, manager, lawyer behaves and exists in the world. You have a powerful agent with a huge pedigree with a lot of pull. You are going to get more money out of that than other people. And then I think the final piece of the puzzle is like you personally. What are you willing to accept? How do you value yourself? And that's the piece of the puzzle that, like, oddly, I can't believe, like, sitting where I do now, 20 years almost into a writing career and 15 years in LA. Melissa, can you believe that? 15 years in LA this September. Gotta go. It's time to go. No, I'm kidding.
Move here.
Yeah, exactly. I think as the individual, you start to say, wait a minute, I won't work for that little. I want you to ask for this much for me. So you start to play a role in your own situation, where I found that when that was the case for me, it's like I couldn't believe I had a say in my own pay, but how in the world was possible that I wasn't thinking that way? And it took years of kind of finally having, I think, confidence and experience, which made me feel like I personally had leverage. So I think those are the many factors that go into answering your question.
So is that luck, skill,
Both.
tenacity?
All three.
Yeah.
Luck, skill, tenacity, privilege. Who do you come from? Where do you come from? What do you look like? What ingoing money do you have? All those things. I wish I could say that just tenacity, just talent. I think you do come to Los Angeles and you come to, I think, any creative industry, but especially this kind of storied media world, Hollywood in particular. And you think that there's this expression, Steve Martin said it, and it like was really like bore into me, I think incorrectly, be so good they can't ignore you. Or his quote is something like that. Be so good they can't ignore you, let's just say, is the philosophy behind it. And you can be so good and they can ignore you, right? Like talent is not necessarily the indicator of what's going to happen. So yeah, you're so right. It's all those factors and then some. Do you have a Steve Martin quote book?
We're going to just, this is a little aside. Have you read this? It's called Wealth of Pigeons.
No, but I love for
Yeah,
the
Wealth of
listeners, it's
Pigeons.
this like amazing cover with these little graphics of fancy pigeon.
So Steve Martin partnered with this comic, and the comic would write the pictures, and then Steve Martin would write the jokes that go along with it.
Perfect.
Fantastic. It's like Far Side meets, I don't know, something else. The New York.
And the fact that it's called The Wealth of Pigeons, I feel like there's a theme there. There's a vibe there. And look at him. He's been in this industry for how long? And I do think that things have changed. I think there are less people trying to climb this ladder. And so I do think it was possible for that concept of the cream always rises to the top and like all those maxims about if you are talented enough, it will break down every barrier. You'll get in every room and everyone will take notice. And I just think the volume of people who have pursued this dream, which is ultimately a beautiful thing, right? It has gotten more, there has been more opportunity to get here, to come here, to live here, to work here. And that pertains to everything from you can shoot a web series and be the Broad City Girls to you can put up your own comedy on TikTok, right? So there is a democratization of opportunity, but I think then that means the numbers of people trying to do it go up. And as has happened in the past, certainly 10 years, the money to give those people has gone down. And like, why is that the case? Well, that's a whole other situation. But yeah, so things have gotten tight here. They've gotten tricky, as I'm sure you're reading about in all the media about what it is to try to be a creative specifically in LA right now.
And that also, Jessie, and I know you can speak to this because you and I have had similar deals, similar places. It also speaks to that power and balance of there's all these people flooding into the industry. And then there's a limited amount of money. And from what we're being told, it's like more limited than ever. They're spending less than ever, which I don't know if that's true or not, to be honest.
Right.
I think it depends probably studio to studio because things are still getting made. But to the point of when you're being paid well for something, right? Because you are farther along in your career now. And because you're thinking of your career as a business, you're able to ask for what you want. How do you navigate that world when The studio system very much still feels they have the power. And we both know that when we are negotiating deals, whether it's us or our reps or both, there is pushback as to this writer did this pass for free. Or this writer did it for this. And that is happening because people are flooding in the industry. And I think they just don't realize that like it's the norm to negotiate for yourself. And instead they're not taking that agency. So how do you navigate those waters when you're getting pushback from the very people who are going to give you these deals?
Yeah, I have two answers. One is like a direct answer to the question, and one is like a how I live my life, like the other pieces of the puzzle. The more direct answer is I work with my team and I have a manager for TV and film. I have a book agent and I have a lawyer already, right? There's like percentages of my income going to those people. It's a separate conversation. But this is to say, we all have to have kind of a bottom line number. What is the amount of work that this is going to take? And sometimes that conversation, honestly, you could probably do this pretty quickly. So I know they're offering you less, but you can juggle multiple projects because of the amount of work. So I think this could be terminology is like a cash grab. They'll say, this is a cash grab. Take it, do the work, make it quick. Don't worry about giving it your A+ job. And you do have to, I hate to say, kind of have an internal negotiation around what effort am I putting in for what I'm being paid. So there's that. What is the opportunity here? What does it mean for me in terms of my career? But also, what does it mean for me in terms of my finances? There have been times in my life where I have sold projects and been more stable and been able to say, no, I have this income. You're offering me too low of a thing on this. I'm just going to walk, and to be prepared to walk. And I think there are other times when you say to yourself, and this is how they get you, right? This is a huge opportunity to work with a producer that is really meaningful to me, or a platform that's really meaningful to me. And I'm going to say yes to this because I view it as a building opportunity. So I'm going to get paid this much money, but I'm going to earn this step forward, this step up the rung. That gets harder and harder the older you get, because you recognize that some of those relationship income opportunities are shallow and that they don't really go anywhere. So that's like the money answer to the question. The other answer to the question is I have built a bigger, broader life of creation that doesn't rely on a desperation for one single deal. And that has been so hard to almost wrap my brain around in terms of, no, the life of a creative for me, but I think this is a philosophy that others should get behind too, is not about that one huge whale of a deal at Netflix. If it isn't happening, right? Especially if it isn't happening. And for some people, it happens. For some people, they land it and a whole career is built on one opportunity. I've seen it happen. I know you have too. So if I'm going to want the ability to like spiritually say no to a very bad deal, then I have to have resources, financial resources, opportunities for income, stability in my life and in my relationship. I'm a married person, so this pertains to that allows me to say, this isn't a good deal for me creatively, and this isn't a good deal for me financially. And I can say no because I have these other sources of financial stability that make me able to pursue the projects I want to pursue. So that's like a whole, and I know that is very much the philosophy of A, you, Melissa, but also B, this podcast, like what you are talking about and how you're trying to get creatives to see that there's an emotional piece to that answer, right? Which is I do things to make money that don't look like glitzy, fun, Hollywood, amazing deals. And that is in this city, that used to be something that made me feel insecure. And now, because so many more people are, I think, struggling to find consistent work in just the lane they want, just TV staff writing, just developing 1 hour, just selling film scripts, that this approach of having a lot of flexibility because you've built other things is now more attractive than ever. So it's been really interesting to see that shift and to get questions from people about like how I've been doing it for all these years.
So when I talk to people about different investing, and often it's real estate based, I'm all about hitting singles. I just hit singles over and over again. If you accidentally catch a hole, catch the ball and hit a double, triple, or even a home run, then great. But if you're always hitting those singles, then you have this base to rely on. And it seems like that's what you're talking about with the not trying to find that whale of a deal kind of a thing. You're catching salmon or maybe even trout along the way. So talk to that, expand on what that, you have books, you got your script writing, you got your newsletter. What makes up all these different drip trickle flows and floods, and
Yeah.
how does that whole pie of money come together?
Yeah. And I should way back up, and I'll try not to make this too long winded, but my very first jobs were not in writing. So I have a base in marketing. I worked for agencies in New York City, an ad agency. I worked in marketing at the Tribeca Film Festival. I worked for a big media agency, McCann, and then for Johnson and Johnson internally. So I had all this kind of connectivity there. So when I first came to Los Angeles, I had a marketing job in branded content. And then when I left to go write, I was freelance creating decks, literally PowerPoint presentations at that point. This is pre-Canva. And I was doing that for extra money, right? So the idea of what did I have? I had relationships in marketing. What did people need? Decks. I'm making decks for $500, right? I'm making a deck a week or whatever for $500. It's very specific, but it's the base that I had. Then I started writing online copy for a bunch of different websites. This was all while I was pursuing selling television scripts. That was my dream, was to step into that world, sell television scripts, and then write on television shows, etc. Doing that on the side, having some successes, having some whales every now and then, but all the while, again, writing website copy for people that had connected me through the marketing world. Then I got a job writing website copy for Fashion Police, which was so fun, right? So I'm in the Joan Rivers world and I'm getting closer. So now my side writing work is getting closer to film and TV. I'm here in LA. I'm asking my managers for side jobs. Is there anybody you know that needs a little copy written? And I should also say that by that point, when I decided to leave full-time work and become a full-time writer, I had 7 years of blogging under my belt. So I had this blog called 20 Nothings, and I had written it for free. I made very little off ad sales of that blog, maybe $200 a month to put an actual amount to it. But I had all this experience. So people saw that and were willing to bring me on to have me do freelance work. And then slowly but surely, I started doing more creative projects that would make me a little bit of money. I had a live storytelling show for many years, and I would make that door fee. That's probably $600 a month, $750 a month, maybe got a little bit more. This is real drip. I don't know. Maybe that's trickle money at that point. That's trickle. And then 5, 6, 7 years into my writing career, I hooked up with this organization called Writing Pad. They were doing writing classes. They wanted me to come teach storytelling and blogging. So now I'm being paid about 120, 150 hourly. So now I have an hourly coaching rate and I'm stepping into that work all the while selling other stuff. And then eventually I moved into doing some of that private coaching with clients. And so I'm making money in that way. And then my husband and I also made a very big decision. I was the captain of that we were going to do a cash out refinance of a home that we owned that had gained a lot of value in Los Angeles. And I was going to be the person that learned about that, organized that, worked with the bank, decided what to do with the money. We built an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit in the back of our home using an existing garage. And now I run our Airbnb, which brings in between $2,700 and $3,500 a month, depending on the season. So that was a project that when we think about what am I doing to bring in money to my life and to my family life, that was something that I decided I could manage with my creative life, having much more flexibility than my husband, and that I learned how to do, got the research done on, and actually managed to build. So that became a whole nother thing that became passive income. And that was something that I really wanted to look at all the ways I was making money and figure out one piece of the puzzle that could be passive. Because when you are pursuing creative work, I'm sure you both know this, your brain can only handle so much. And if it's too much trickle or even flow, it is impacting the other big work that you want to do. And I had some big projects like these books that I wanted to get done. And the little stuff was eating up too much of my time. So I needed something that was stationary like this ADU. So a long way of saying so many things.
So this is great. I want everybody to rewind and listen to that section again. I think there's always this idea of, okay, someone goes to Hollywood, they're going to probably starve to death, might work at a restaurant, might do whatever different thing. And there's this idea of maybe that's what that world looks like. But you created a whole different world. You found all these different ways to generate income that was leading you towards where you wanted to go. You were building experience, building connections, all of those things. And so I think, yeah, that is just, I love that piece of it. And then at the very end, you talking about just like that. Basically, you only have so many cognitive resources in your brain.
Yes.
And
Less
I tell
every
that,
day, Tony. Less
I know.
every day.
I can, yeah, absolutely. And I tell that to people all the time where they're like, okay, you do so much. How do you do this? And the reality is I can write early in the morning and I can write late at night. Outside of that, once the world wakes up or hasn't gone to sleep yet, it's really hard for me to get any of that done. I've got my creative time. And so I think that just the way you've framed that, the way you built into this world, I think people need to understand that maybe it just happens, but most of the time it doesn't. And having all these different side hustles and whatever, doing whatever it takes to make it work. And it is work. And I think that's okay. And to create this world of work that you enjoy.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful thing. I can't remember the quote. I'm going to do a blog post. We got this screen door for our camper van that, because I wake up in the middle of the night and open the van, wake up my family and everything. So we got this screen door so I can sneak in and out. But it's something like choose a life where you never need a holiday or something. And what a great way to live.
Yeah. Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think that it's so interesting to me that as I look back now, there were periods of time where I had some shame around this kind of hustler nature where I was always doing these extra things because I watched people. And again, I'm going to speak to Los Angeles and also I think New York City. I watched people who didn't have to do that. And I made this assessment in my mind, like, that's because they're more talented than you. That's because they have some secret sauce that you don't have. And I've learned that the secret sauce is either a lot of financial resources from family, which we just cannot, that's the luck of the draw. And what a beautiful thing. If it's something that you were born into, great, use it, right? Use that and use that as fuel in your life. But also, you just don't know what people's financial lives look like. And I am now learning one of the benefits of talking about money with people. I am now learning just how much credit card debt my friends have. This idea that I had to work and people didn't have to, maybe they did have to, and they didn't. And so it's been so fascinating to learn about that and to see that and I grew up with some financial insecurities. And so this idea of having debt or being unable to afford things that were really important to me. I live on the West Coast. My family's on the East Coast. Flights home are non-negotiable. I have to be able to afford that. So some of those things are a piece of a puzzle of having comfort and security in my life that I can't live without. And they're a little bit of just what I was brought up to, all the stuff that I've got going on. And I just didn't think that people were living completely differently. And that a lot of them were living because of death. So that's just not something I was comfortable holding. And so a little bit of the puzzle of my life was in an effort to make sure that wasn't a piece of my life. And also I have a partner that efforted in that direction with me. That was really important to him too. And we lived below our means. We bought a home below our means. We traveled below our means. Like a lot of those things were choices that we were aligned on. I have a lot of gratitude for having navigated my way to a partner that is aligned with my financial purview and goals. And when we're not aligned, we talk about it. Because for me, as a person that's decided to be partnered, it's huge, so much bigger than I think I ever realized.
Man, you just keep.
Oh, like Tony's speechless. Yes, have I heard my spot back? Can I come back?
Things that just they line in so well with how I live and what I think. The live below your means thing is, to me, there's a lot of ways to make money. And some people say save your way there. Some people say invest your way there, whatever it is. But if you're living beyond your means, you're going to be fighting it forever. So I think that's just a huge piece. But then the learning about other people's financial world. And this has been recent for me too, not necessarily as much with individuals, but seeing the wool behind some of these larger businesses that I know about or
Interesting.
Or that have seen rapid growth, that they look like they're big. They've got 30, 40, 50, 100 people in their business, and they've just grown like a rocket ship. And you find out that they're not making a cent or the business might be losing money.
Yeah.
And I do business coaching with people, and And I have one right now, and he's a contractor, and he's got a small team, but it started off with just him when he and I started working together. And when now he's got a small team, and he goes, "Man, that company over there, they've got 40 people now." And I go, "Yeah, but just because they have 40 people, it doesn't mean they're making any money. And it doesn't mean
That's right.
they're turning out a good product. It doesn't mean that they're happy, all of those things." And I think that's something that people need to take stock of, right? That
Yeah.
perception, when you see
Yeah.
behind the curtain, it isn't always exactly what it seems. And so,
Yeah.
so that's why you do your best instead of necessarily worrying about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. And I think that's really hard. That is one of the harder pieces of the puzzle of living in the culture of this city of LA. And I
Yes, it
know
is.
it is one of the hard things about living in the culture of the city of New York. So funny. Once I entered the book publishing world and I started meeting authors who live around the country, I was really aware of how much the culture of both the money culture, the like image culture, and the work culture of LA actually impacts you as a creative. And I think it is such a double-edged sword, right? Because you swim in the water of the work. So you're somewhere and you meet someone and suddenly you're doing a project with them. And that kind of, it's like being in politics in DC. How could you possibly launch a political career if you're not living among all the people doing that? I think there is real value to that to a certain point. But then the detriment is exactly what you're speaking to, this idea of it has to look a certain way. I have to look a certain way. And that can really, keeping your eye on your own paper is such a hard thing in this city. And I'm grateful for age and time. That is something that's changing for me with age and time. I was always embarrassed because my husband and I had just made this decision. Like, we're just not car people. We're just not going to have X level of car. We're going to have this kind of car and it's going to cost this much and whatever. And that was always really hard for me in LA because this is a place where car culture is like one of those things that's just a big piece of the puzzle here. And so it's interesting to look at that as one small example of the difference between a $300 car payment and a $700 car payment. You have to make a decision and then put those blinders on. You're right.
Yeah, that's a good point about Los Angeles.
Yeah.
For sure. It is a very unique little ecosystem. And I think they're definitely experiencing a reckoning right now. I was on the phone with a showrunner last weekend and they were just telling me no one's working and no one's been working if we're talking about in TV staffing, which is a main way that people earn their flow and sometimes flood in that market.
Absolutely.
And that just isn't existing right now because they're making a lot less and they're hiring in the upper echelons. So like new writers are struggling to break in.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is very fascinating because I think that shame you spoke about earlier, Jessie, where it's like having these other drips, trickles, sometimes flows in order to, or while you're building that career, used to carry a level of shame. I got it myself. I remember speaking on panels or just being around other writers and talking about other things I was doing or other streams of income. And they would just be like, ew, why would I ever do that? Why would I only want to write? I only want to write to, I'm not making this up. This is really what they would say.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to see that shift a bit now because the work just isn't there.
Yeah.
And now, like you said, we can't compare our behind the scenes to somebody else's highlight reel because we don't know what that picture was. And now that they are looking to diversify their income, and it's no longer shameful because they didn't put that in place to begin with. And not only not put it in place, but feel shame around even having that because it was like held up to a standard of we should only receive our income from making a film or making a show.
I know. Yeah. And I think there's so many reasons for that, right? Like I respect the reason that I want to focus all my energy on this one thing. Do you have a plan B and your plan A isn't strong enough? Like, that like kind of mentality. I get that. I do. But I do think that one of the things, and Melissa, like, even with all this dripping and trickling and flowing and flooding, I had a personal reckoning around the amount of time I was going to focus on. It wasn't even about time. It was about like, how is this work and how is this ecosystem of work? And I'm specifically speaking about my film and TV work. How is it impacting the feeling of my life? How is doing this work impacting the feeling of my life? And I did this through some personal coaching, some life coaching, some therapy. I really had to have people help me. Some therapy with you, Melissa. I had to say, what do I want my days to look like? What do I want my years to look like? What are milestones that I want to be experiencing and having? What is the way that I want to live? How much money do I need to live that way? And how is this work, again, specifically TV and film writing and the structure of that work, helping and hurting? And it became so much of my focus in my 20s and early 30s. And I think this makes sense developmentally, right? It was like, my identity is writer. My identity is creator. Makes me what I need to be happy is this success in this vertical. And it just expands as you get older and you realize, oh my God, many of my days are very sad because they're all focused around the pursuit of this one thing. And I am so much more than this one thing. I'm a traveler and I'm an educator and I'm an auntie. I want time to be an aunt. What does that look like? How does that factor in? I think my worldview really opened up. And I think that may be something that only comes really with time and maturity and with a lot of experience living to say, I don't like how this feels, this piece of my work puzzle. Okay, what do I need financially? What do I need work-wise? Like really being ready to reorient around that. And I do think it takes a reckoning. I had the literal one on Halloween after a big deal fell through. And we call it my exorcism. You remember it was this really big emotional moment. And I talk a lot about that now. I talk a lot about like finally being willing to acknowledge that I was sad and I was frustrated. And so like those emotions, I think when you're persistent and when you're focused and when you have this big plan A and when you're here in LA, there's this very like, okay, chin up. And it's hard to acknowledge, like, does this actually feel like day to day? Oh, really bad. So what am I going to do about that?
So we're talking about money on this podcast, but really what's the point of money? What you need to do what you want, right?
Yeah.
What you've dove into here is really designing your life.
Yeah.
And how do you design your life to get to live the way you want? And I totally agree. I think it takes time and wisdom and retrospect, and people get it at different times in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like you got it pretty early on, which is great.
Oh, I also think it
lucky.
takes inspiration from other people. And Melissa, I really want to call you out in this category because you have been a light ahead of me. You have been like a beacon of kind of a lifestyle and a way to live. And yours is a kind of spirit of person and life and work that I've always really admired. And if you don't have those kinds of people in your life who are living slightly differently, certainly I can think we can now say differently than our parents lived, differently than the generation above us lived, you don't see that and say, wait a minute, look over there. I like how that looks. I want to navigate myself toward that. And I can have a conversation, a really honest and vulnerable conversation with that person about how they're doing it and start to create myself in that image. And to that point, my husband and I actually recently started working with a new financial advisement firm. And for us, I just want to call this out because this is a piece of our lifestyle that's slightly different from others, but has been something we've been able to create life around. This firm specifically works with people who don't have children. And that's been an interesting thing to explore. They make that a tenet of their financial planning because the future planning for us looks a little bit different than it would do for people with children. So that's just been like one more piece of a puzzle of willing to understand the value of working with a financial planner and with financial advisement. And then B, oh my goodness, now there are really specific niche firms for the way that you want to live your life. And if you're no longer ashamed of those pieces of your life puzzle, you can get really helpful direct coaching from that. And then they introduce us to other people in a similar situation. And now we have a community around the way that we want to live and the diversity of that. So it's just been, I don't think these kinds of things existed. I almost know that they didn't 15, 20 years ago. So this all speaks to this like vulnerability around money, specificity around lifestyle, and willingness to say, I want to live a little bit differently. I can navigate toward that path.
Man, that resonates with me a lot. I grew up in very rural area, construction family, logging community, everybody around me and my whole life too. It's like, how do you make money? You go work with your hands and you go build something, you go do something. And to me, that was always what work has looked like. It's still a lot of it does in the world that I'm in. And it's really pretty recently for me where I'm like, man, there are these people that live off being a creative. And I've been writing for 5 years, but I still feel like it still doesn't even feel real.
Yeah.
And it is such an interesting thing. And we have somebody coming on here soon it's my cousin. He's a producer down in LA.
Yeah.
And his episode will have aired before this one.
Mhm.
And we grew up with our grandpas or uncles, and or not our grandpas or uncles, our grandpas or brothers.
Uh-huh.
And so there's very similar kind of mentality in that. But he goes, I want to make movies. And so he went to college at Boston University to make movies. And he went and got his master's degree at UCLA. And he goes, I'm going to make movies and I'm going to be a creative. And it just blows my mind. And I've been interviewing more creatives lately and doing articles on more creatives lately. And it's so fascinating that is an option and everybody doesn't know it. I never knew it. That wasn't even a thought in my brain. And it's great to have you saying that and people like Melissa out there living it.
Yeah.
That you can be that creative or whatever it is you want to do. If you want to go work with your hands, that's fantastic too. If you want to go do whatever it is, but just understanding that there is the options really are limited and unlimited. And maybe you do need to have a bunch of side hustles or figure out how to make money while you get there.
Yeah.
But you can get there.
Yeah. And I didn't have a lot of creative people. I did have a lot of writers. I grew up with an aunt who was an artist who very much had a diversity of income. So I looked at that and I saw that, but no one was a writer. There was no one that was doing that. But no one ever did that thing that you see sometimes in movies and you hear about in other families, which is you'll never make it. That's a dead end career. What are you thinking? This is too dangerous. That idea of being told that's not a real job. It didn't happen for me. And so I really see that now as I was very much encouraged to go and do and make things very young. I went a little school newspaper, I had a little website. I had launched a website when I was in college. I had a college TV show, like just all this stuff. And everyone really was encouraging in that way. And I do think the thing that I see hurting other people that my parents, we always had a really nice conversation around was this concept of we're proud of you. What's important to us is that you're safe. You have enough to sustain your life in a safe way, that all your needs are met and that you're fulfilled by your work. And I'll say anecdotally, I know a young person right now that is struggling against a family that is not sure what they're going to tell the other people at the country club about his career choices, right? Everyone else has gone into very clear paths involving finance and business, and this person is doing something else, and they're anxious about that and what that looks like and what they're going to talk about. And they're anxious for him, but he's not anxious. He knows what he needs to have to survive. He feels like he has enough. He's not ashamed of his path. So it's so interesting to remember how much a piece of the puzzle of that is. It's like, what is enough to some people and what is valuable to some people and what jobs are okay to some people. I'm fascinated by that right now.
Yeah. And I was never discouraged. I know that there are certainly youth out there that are discouraged in all sorts, whether it's going into the trades or the arts or whatever. There is a lot of pressure in that way, a lot of pressure on sports these days and things. But there is that a lot of people have to deal with, but it's also just like the not knowing. And I think that is all as detrimental as all the screen time and the social media and all those things are. It does at least open up the world to young people can see that there are all these different things out there.
Yeah.
We graduated high school and they said, okay, you go to college, kid, because that's the next thing on the list to do. And even though I had no idea what the heck I was going to do. And so I think that is cool for all the parents out there. I think just being encouraging and supportive to let kids figure it out because they're smart and they will.
Yeah.
And then for all the kids out there or young people or whatever that explore all the different things out there and see where it might take you. And it's okay to pivot or try something different or whatever. And it's okay to fail or have a bump or have someone say no to your article pitch or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I think one thing that people don't talk about with being young, and no one told me this, and I wish they had, so that's why I want to say it here, is the most important thing you can do is not find the right job to climb the right ladder to be a company person for the rest of your life. It's actually to put $200 a month away in an index fund from the time you're 21 years old. Because, this idea of where are you going to be and how are you going to give yourself flexibility? You can have 100 different jobs and you can really struggle to navigate your way. But if you are saving from a young age, putting your money in the market and being smart about it, and very simple investment, you will end up secure when you're my age, which is about to be 42. So I wish someone had said, I have a cousin who's like on a wavering, windy path, and she's not worried about it. She has a ton of savings. She didn't savings since she was 18 years old. So that flexibility and that kind of lifestyle is something that I feel like we don't talk about a lot. I wish that had been a piece of the puzzle of an education I received, because it would make me a lot more chill about when I need to get this next book sold or everything like that. That kind of flexibility, I think, is really golden. I think people are talking about it more now, but it wasn't a part of what I was educated to do when I first got out of it.
Yeah, I don't remember really any financial education in school. I got taught how to fill out a checkbook or something.
100%. Yeah, barely.
But the best piece of advice my dad ever gave me, I must have been in my early 20s, and he goes, "We don't really know anything except for houses, kid. You better buy one." And I go, "Oh, okay." And that was back when Countrywide was giving loans to kids making $8 an hour at the Boys and Girls Club.
Yes.
And honestly, buying that first house, even though they should have never given me that loan, they let me the rents it was already getting to qualify it.
Yes.
And obviously it led to a giant financial turmoil. That loan and me being able to keep that house rented, and fortunately I was able to do the work and do a lot of the stuff when I was just getting into it. But that set me on the trajectory that I went on, and that the value of saving early, investing early, that compounding effect it's
huge.
Really powerful.
Yeah, it's really huge. I also think that kind of financial literacy shouldn't only apply to people who are studying finance, right?
Absolutely not.
Adults, sit your creatives down and say, yes, be a creative, be as creative as you want to be, go wild. But also, there are some facts of American finance that you need to know. And I would advise this, and you can do both. I was so intimidated by money and the conversation around money and how money works and how you make money work for so long. And it really took me looking myself in the mirror and saying, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be a wife that is only looking at her husband for the answers. I don't want to be a client of an agent that just says, I don't know, let me know how much I made. I just didn't like how that felt. So I got really embarrassed and went to my bank and asked the relationship manager that they assigned me a million embarrassing questions. And I was like, I need help. I don't understand this. It was a wild meeting for him, I'm sure. And at the end, I remember such a lovely man, Bryant Safdie. I remember him saying, I've been in business for X amount of years and no one has ever requested this kind of meeting. And I was so proud. I'd been so embarrassed for the entire meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I felt so powerful. And I've been asking embarrassing questions about money ever since.
And anybody out there listening, if you have an embarrassing question, send it in. We can speak the name or not, and we'll answer it. You got to learn somewhere.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
No reason to be embarrassed.
Yeah. I don't know what you don't know.
The banker's great, because we had a banker on way early in our podcast, and she said a similar thing. I think, Tony, you were the one that would go in and ask all the questions. And she was like,
I would just walk up to the counter and just talk and talk. And
yes. I went in person.
Shout out to Rhea.
Shout out to Bryant for me.
Rhea for you.
Yeah. I mean, they changed my life. That changed my life. So it's invaluable. And that is a piece of a puzzle now with my friendships here in LA, that I'm starting to try to be that person for other people and to offer what I can and be really transparent, which is like where our conversation began, right? About like the fact that these conversations didn't used to be as common as they are. And now I had this kind of cool thing happen where a friend came to me and asked a question about what she should request for freelance pay. And she said, thank you so much. another friend told me that you told her. So I knew it was okay to come to you. And so that, oh my God, what a compliment. What a dream that like someone told someone I'm a safe place. And now more people are asking me, like, that is what I want to be putting out into the community here, especially.
This is so good, Jessie.
Oh, I love it. I'm
I
so glad.
appreciate
I wanted to
everything that you shared.
I really wanted to honor the amazing content that you're putting out. And you have covered so much already that I was really trying to make sure I was bringing up things that maybe people haven't heard yet. And like for me, I think the emotional side of the money conversation as it pertains to LA, but as it pertains to everything is like especially fascinating. And that's what it's been about mostly for me.
This has been great, Jessie. Obviously, I said it multiple times throughout, but yeah, really impressed with your perspective. I think people are going to really enjoy this episode.
Good. All right, friends.
Thank you so much, Jessie. And for everybody listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on your favorite podcast platform. And with that said, we'll see you next time on Drip Trickle Flow Flood. Bye, everybody.